So we spent a lot of time asking you, talking about the situation over the weekend, at the end of last week as well, pro-Palestinian protests, and asked the question why the city has failed up in this point. 14 months later now, these protests have been going on, to really make any significant arrests. Now, to be fair, over the weekend, Fadi Daguerre, our police chief, announced 3 people had been arrested, but we've not heard about other arrests during these times. We know there have been plenty of anti-Semitic incidents. There might have been an arrest here, an arrest there. What's interesting is, even after the fact, we didn't hear much about this, and there are people pointing fingers, myself included, at the municipal administration wondering why. Why is this being tolerated? Because obviously, if you can act with impunity as a protester here and spew hate speech or anti-Semitic speech, rhetoric, and get away with it, you'll continue to do it for as long as you possibly can. That's exactly what we're seeing now. Then there was an incident. There are 2. First of all, the woman who gave the Nazi salute, allegedly this would be last Thursday at Concordia during a protest there, and said something about the final solution, alluding to, of course, the Nazis in World War II, with the idea, of course, the final solution of eliminating all Jewish people from Europe. Brought that up. Now, she owned, as it turns out, a second cup franchise in, of all places, the Jewish General Hospital. Had a couple of them in there. The people there, immediately upon finding this out and, checking the facts and making sure this was the person in question, have taken away her franchise. She is no longer associated with the company for obvious reasons. They don't tolerate hate or anti-Semitism. Yet there was another incident that we just found out about, I think a day ago, perhaps, or 2 days ago. Rabbi Adam Schreier, who was downtown with his family. He was on with Elias earlier in this morning. Anthony Housefather's on the line. Anthony, I don't know if you heard Rabbi Schreier's story or not.
I did. I mean, I've talked to him, but I didn't hear what he said on Elias' show.
So here's a little bit of what happened when he went with his family just downtown for a walk on the weekend. Here we go.
I did not engage anyone, did not exchange one word with any of these protesters, with really anyone else other than my own family members. I didn't speak. And as I was standing there, a policeman approached me and asked me to keep on moving. And I looked around in disbelief. I wasn't sure why he was talking to me. I hadn't initiated, hadn't spoken, hadn't done anything. And he said, because we don't want something bad to happen. So what do you mean? He said, well, we don't want a fire to start between the two sides. I was really in disbelief. There were probably more than 100 people standing there on all sides of the streets. I was standing on the sidewalk and looking around, and many of them had their phones out just like I did, were recording what was happening. It just happened to be that I was the only one wearing a kippah who was visibly Jewish. In that moment, there was this sinking feeling of, is this really happening?
That's Rabbi Adam Schreier talking about that situation. Just because he was wearing a kippah, and a Montreal police officer decided he'd be a good person to talk to tell him to maybe keep moving. So, Anthony, you're aware of the story. You're aware of what happened here. You're also very much aware, I understand, of the lack of action, if you will, by the city, by our police department in basically dealing with these situations. As I said when I asked the question of our listeners today, this has now been going on for 14 months, and things only appear to be getting worse, not better. So did you have a chance today to speak to the mayor? Is that my understanding?
I spoke to Jimmy Zubris, who is the mayor's, advisor,
right.
and Jimmy was wonderful. He got back to me immediately last night and kept me informed today. And I did see the mayor made a statement about the fact that she was going to reach out to speak to Adam, and that the police chief, Fadi Daguerre, was going to reach out. But I had the opportunity to meet directly with the mayor a couple of weeks ago, along with Mitch Brownstein and Christina Smith and representatives from the Jewish Federation in CIJA, to talk about the fact that I'm concerned that policing in Montreal has turned from enforcing the law and making people feel safe to ensuring that we just don't escalate situations. So we're tolerating lawlessness, we're tolerating criminal acts, we're not, as you said, letting people know when people are arrested after the fact, which often happens, but the population is not aware of it. So people feel they can just get away with breaking the law, breaking municipal bylaws with impunity. And so that's horrible. And what happened to Adam is just reprehensible, because what you're then seeing is a guy standing there acting peacefully, doing nothing but standing there with his family and videoing a protest going by. They don't talk about what the people in the protest are yelling and how uncomfortable they make Montrealers on a repeated basis. They take the guy with the kippah, the visibly Jewish guy, and say, you should leave. It's unbelievable. So that was why I reached out last night, because to me that was a wholly new issue, where police either were completely uneducated about the fact that you could be visibly Jewish and you're not going to engage into confrontation with pro-Palestinian protesters, or what they are trained on doing is just ridiculous. And I was really pleased, by the way, Aaron, to see that the leader of the opposition in Montreal, Arif Salem, came out with a very strong statement that's very consistent with what I just said.
So there are a couple of issues here, Anthony, off the top. First of all, the fact that this has gone on for as long as it has, and as you just said, it doesn't seem to have gotten any better. It's kind of this laissez-faire attitude by this administration to just simply stand back. It's almost like they're hoping for the worst, like someone to actually get hurt or killed before they do something. I hate to put it that way, but that's how it sometimes is beginning to seem to me. And I will point out, by the way, with respect to Rabbi Schreier, it's not as if he was, he's not an Orthodox Jew walking down the street, right? He's just a regular citizen, probably walking in a suit. He just happens to be wearing a kippah, yet a police officer thought this was a good idea. Something there doesn't make sense.
Even if he was Hasidic and more visible, it still would be ridiculous.
No, it would be, but I'm just saying it wasn't obvious for someone, a police officer, to simply, people like this, shouldn't be here. I don't want you to get in trouble.
No, and Adam, by the way, is an exemplary Canadian. He is somebody who, has spent his life working for the community. He's a very well-respected person. He's very quiet and unassuming. Like this is just, it's bonkers.
Yeah.
And when you talk about Montreal's attitude, it's similar to what's happened, in a number of other cities, right, where the police are just trying to avoid any kind of situation getting out of hand, so they tolerate everything, so that they won't have the demonstrators get angry at them. And again, I think if you don't enforce the law, and look at what's happening in Westmount at 1 Westmount Square, and at 1 Wood and at Westmount Square, where you have residents of residential buildings, many of them very elderly, that are having demonstrations constantly under their buildings late at night in complete violation of Westmount bylaws, and the police are refusing to enforce the Westmount bylaws. That just makes no sense. The police have an obligation, whether it's Montreal bylaws, Westmount bylaws, Côte Saint-Luc bylaws, to enforce them, and just to say, well, we're keeping the peace, so it's fine that you can't sleep and that you are afraid to access your building. It's just unacceptable. So Friday, I do have a meeting with the police directly, and Adam will be at that meeting, and so will others. And I'm going to be pretty firm, like I've been before, that this can't continue like this.
Look, I want to ask one other thing, and I know I don't have a lot of time left here. To be fair, some of the criticism here today, I certainly heard it from people when I asked about this, is being, shone on the Prime Minister as well. And I know he came out and said something at the NATO meeting today. But as people say, and as I pointed out, it has been words and nothing more than words. To be fair, Anthony, and I know you've stood up before within this party, within the Federal Liberal Party, and said, you know what, we should be doing a better job. It's one thing to pay lip service to this. It's another to actually follow through. Has anything changed? Has that message gotten through, do you think? And should the Prime Minister be doing more?
So on municipal policing, what all he can really do is talk and say that this is unacceptable and the municipal police should be enforcing the law. And what we can do, and what I've asked for, is for the public safety minister, Dominic LeBlanc, to convene his provincial counterparts and have all of the provinces and the federal government tell the cities that this can't continue like this. And come up with plans where we can assist in whatever way to make this end. So that can be done. What I would say is, like, just over the last month, we released the IRA handbook, the first country to release a handbook to explain how to use the IRA definition to confront anti-Semitism, exactly like the issue with Rabbi Schreier. We listed Samatun as a terrorist organization. We put $65 million into infrastructure for safety at Jewish community buildings and other community buildings. So there have been actions, but again, all levels of government need to step up more. And I really think there has to be a look at, like, for example, federally, we can do bubble legislation. We can create a new intimidation offense that says that blocking access to community buildings is a criminal offense in itself. We can ban the glorification of terrorism. Both of those things are things we could federally do that would change the criminal code, and I'm working hard to advance them. And I think the other thing that I'd be asking the Prime Minister to do is to do a major speech on anti-Semitism. I think the Prime Minister needs to step up and tell the country that what is happening right now is egregious, it's wrong, and it needs to end. And I think putting that in the strongest terms from, I love all the premiers to do it too, but at least the Prime Minister to do that, that's my big request to him in addition to that meeting of public safety ministers.
Have you formally made that request?
Yes.
And have you heard back?
I've spoken to a senior person in his office. I sent a memo on Saturday to the Prime Minister talking about what I saw, of the riots on Friday and the student strike on Thursday and the lead into all of this, and where I thought we needed to step up and do more. And again, he's very sympathetic on the issue of anti-Semitism. He hates anti-Semitism, but I want him to do more, just like I want everybody to do more. And I probably have a better chance of getting him to do more than I do of having, talking to Premier Legault. So let me go after the person I know.
By the way, funny you brought up Premier Legault. We found out today he's had enough of this as well. Apparently, he kind of let the city know today, and Valerie Plante know that if something wasn't done, he would consider getting the SQ to get involved, which I thought was rather interesting as well.
Well, what he put out was the statement saying that the SQ would be willing to help the city of Montreal. We've said the same thing about the RCMP. Dominic LeBlanc said exactly the same thing and has repeatedly. But Montreal has actually thousands of police. The issue is not that Montreal doesn't have enough police to deal with these sporadic demonstrations. The issue is they're not using the police to actually police. That's the problem.
And that's where we have to leave it. Anthony, I always appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
You bet.
Take care.